Welcome to this session introducing the pre-application phase of the certification process under Regulation EU 2017/745. This first module is part of a series of videos designed to provide you with an overview of the certification process under the European Medical Device Regulation. This series is designed to allow you to better understand the regulatory requirements for the certification process, provide you with an overview of the certification process while allowing you to identify the different key steps, align your certification projects and go-to-market strategy with the requirements of the regulation and the certification process implemented by GMED, and finally to allow you to prepare the submission of your certification projects in the best conditions. Understanding and visibility of the certification process stages is critical to the success of your certification projects. For this reason, the GMED team encourages you to take these different modules prior to any project submission or during your certification process. The certification process under Regulation EU 2017/745 consists of 12 steps divided into 5 different phases. The first step corresponds to contacting the notified body, followed by the issuance of a quotation and the receipt of the order from the manufacturer. The certification contract is then signed before or at the same time as the manufacturer's formal application for certification is received. After receiving the formal application for certification from the manufacturer, the notified body proceeds to the examination of the application, which is concluded by the acceptance or the rejection of the formal application for certification. Once the formal application for certification is accepted, the conformity assessment activities can be initiated. At the end of it, there is a final examination followed by the certificate decision. When certification under Regulation EU 2017/745 is granted, post-certification monitoring and control activities begin and continue until the certification is renewed. In this module, we will review the first phase of the certification process, which is called the pre-application phase and covers the steps related to the manufacturer's contact with the notified body, the issuance of quotations, and the receipt of the order. The pre-application phase begins as soon as GMED receives the Single Information Form, more commonly known as SIF, completed and signed by the manufacturer. After receiving this form, GMED teams analyse the SIF in order to provide the manufacturer with the quotes for the conformity assessment services to be performed. The duration relative to the analysis of the SIF, completed in a satisfactory way by the manufacturer, and the realisation of activities necessary to conclude the corresponding estimates is estimated at 3 weeks. Upon receipt of the quotations, the manufacturer places an order with GMED, thus completing the pre-order phase. The main purpose of the pre-application activities is to provide the manufacturer with a quote for the conformity assessment of their devices under the European Medical Device Regulation. To achieve this goal, the manufacturer must fill in the SIF provided in order to provide GMED with the information on the scope of its certification application project, such as company information, QMS, activities and products, etc. The notified body must then carry out preliminary verification of the information transmitted by the manufacturer within the SIF. The Single Information Form is therefore the form that allows the manufacturer to submit to GMED its draft application for certification under Regulation EU 2017/745. This form must be filled in precisely because the information transmitted will be vigorously analysed by the GMED teams in order to carry out the necessary and mandatory preliminary verifications in order to ensure, in particular, that the product or products covered by the proposed application fall within the scope of the regulations and that their classification is appropriate. Please note that during this stage, GMED does not assess the compliance of the information submitted through the SIF. A preliminary verification of certain information is performed, the objective of which is not to rule on its compliance. The information transmitted within the SIF will also be analysed in order to establish a sampling plan of affected devices prior to certificate issuance, to identify devices that will require technical document assessment prior to certificate issuance. Establish an audit programme, including an audit programme of subcontractors and suppliers as appropriate. And finally, to establish one or more estimates adapted to the project of request for certification of the manufacturer. Several new requirements introduced by Regulation EU 2017/745 may have a direct impact on pre-application activities. These requirements include the scope of the regulation, device classification rules, device identification codes, and device sampling. We will review these 4 themes in order to present you the regulatory requirements that you need to master. Firstly, regarding the scope of the regulation. As under Directives 90/385/EEC and 93/42/EEC, Regulation EU 2017/745 is applicable to medical devices and accessories to medical devices, the respective definitions of which are given in Article 2 of the regulation. It is important to underline an evolution of the definition of medical device compared to the definition previously given within the directives. Also note that Article 1 and Annex 16 of Regulation EU 2017/745 introduce a new list of products without medical purpose for which the requirements of the regulation become applicable. The regulation also amends Directive 2001/83/EC through Article 117 of the regulation, which extends the scope of Regulation EU 2017/745 to devices that meet the following criteria. The device and the drug form one integral product. The single integral product is exclusively intended for use in the given combination. The single integral product is not reusable. Now concerning the rules for the classification of devices, Annex 8 of Regulation EU 2017/745 lists 22 classification rules. In comparison to the directives, several rules have been created or updated significantly. These include Rule 8 with the change of class of some implants, Rule 11 regarding software, with a specific guide on this subject available in MDCG 2019-11, Rule 19 on devices incorporating or consisting of nanomaterial, Rule 20 linked to invasive devices related to body orifices intended to administer drugs by inhalation, Rule 21 on substances, and lastly Rule 22 for active therapeutic devices with an integrated diagnostic function. We also highlight the creation of a new class, Class 1R for reusable surgical instruments, which requires the intervention of a notified body to be CE certified under the regulation. The assignment of the class of the device, according to the classification rules defined in the regulation, is essential and decisive for the identification of the conformity assessment procedures applicable to the device and for the application of the sampling rules. The classification of your device is therefore crucial to your certification project and must be assigned in a rigorous, well thought out and documented manner. The third topic concerns device identification codes. Regulation EU 2017/745 introduces new requirements for devices identification and categorization that are significantly different from those applied under the directives. This translates into the implementation and use of a new code system, including designation codes, EMDM, and the basic UDI ID. We will now review these 3 code systems to introduce them to you and give you valuable information to master them. Commission implementing Regulation 2017/2185 establishes designation codes for defining the fields of designation of notified bodies under Regulation EU 2017/745. There are 3 types of code. Firstly, MDA codes for active medical devices and MDN codes for non-active medical devices. These codes reflect the design and purpose of the device. Only one code should be assigned to the device, and the assignment of a code is essential and necessary. The identification of the most appropriate MDA or MDM code for the device is based on the design and purpose of the device. It is requested and expected that the selection of the most appropriate code for the device is made following the hierarchical order defined in Regulation 2017/2185. The hierarchical order is defined by the position of the code in the list established within the regulation. Therefore, if more than one MDA or MDN code applies to the device, the applicable code that is highest in the list must be assigned to the device. After assigning the MDA or MDN code, the manufacturer must then identify the MDS and MDT codes applicable to its device. MDS codes are so-called horizontal codes that reflect the specific characteristics of the device. Unlike the MDA or MDN codes, multiple MDS codes can be assigned to the device. Therefore, all codes applicable to the device must be identified. MDT codes are also horizontal codes that reflect the technologies or processes used. Like MDS codes, multiple MDT codes can be assigned to the device. Therefore, all codes applicable to the device must be identified. Please note that it's necessary and expected that the device to be assigned at least one MDT code from the list of MDT 2001 to MDT 2010. Guidance documents published by the Commission, as well as the GMED Guide to Code Assignment, will provide you with valuable additional information to help you identify the most appropriate codes for your device. The designation codes are used for different purposes, including use by the Commission in the context of the designation of notified bodies to define the perimeter in which the notified body is authorised to intervene for certification under Regulation EU 2017/745. They are also used by notified bodies to qualify and select resources from conformity assessment activities. And lastly, the designation codes are also found in the implementation of device sampling rules. It is important to note that the validation of the designation codes applicable to your device is the responsibility of the notified body. Now, about the EMDN, the European Medical Device Nomenclature, introduced by Article 26 of the regulation, is mainly used for regulatory purposes to support the different actors, such as manufacturers, notified bodies, competent authorities, in the implementation of the regulation, while providing a detailed description of the key devices to patients. The EMDN is characterized by an alphanumerical structure based on a 7-level hierarchical tree. This structure groups devices into 3 main levels. Firstly, a first level corresponding to the category of device. Secondly, a level corresponding to the device group. And thirdly, a level corresponding to the type of device. For device accessories, each accessory follows the EMDN code of the device for which it is associated. If an accessory can be used with several devices belonging to different groups and/or types, it must be associated with the most representative group or type. Each device is therefore classified within its nomenclature by an alphanumerical code composed of a letter referring to the category, 2 digits referring to the group, and a series of 2 to 10 digits referring to the type. For each device in your product line, it is therefore necessary to identify the most accurate EMDN code possible corresponding to your device. Please also note that for each non-implantable Class 2B and implantable Class 2B device, such as suture, staple, dental filling, orthodontic appliance, dental crown, screw, wedge, plate, guide, pin, clip, and connecting device within your product line, it is necessary to identify the 4th level EMDN code representative of your device. The nomenclature is primarily used for device identification and registration, application of sampling rules, and post-market surveillance, vigilance, and post-market data. The third and final type of device identification code corresponds to the basic UDI ID. Regulation EU 2017/745 introduces a unique identification system for all devices based on the Unique Device Identifier (UDI) and defines the basic UDI ID as the primary identifier of a device model. It is the primary key for entering information into the UDI database and appears on the relevant EU certificates and declarations of conformity. Therefore, each device is considered to be associated with the basic UDI ID. According to the regulation, the manufacturer is obliged to assign a basic UDI ID to the implantable, non-sampleable Class 3 and 2B device before submitting an application for certification to a notified body. For these devices, the assigned basic UDI ID is mentioned on the EU Technical Documentation Evaluation Certificate or the EU Type Examination Certificate and/or EU Product Verification Certificate. However, for devices subject to sampling, the manufacturer is obliged to assign a basic UDI ID at the latest before the devices are placed on the market. GMED still recommends that a manufacturer transmit the basic UDI ID for each device covered by the draft application for certification under Regulation EU 2017-745 as early as the pre-application phase via the single information form. The basic UDI ID is primarily used for device identification and registration, and also in the application of sampling rules. The fourth and last regulatory evolution we would like to present to you concerns the sampling of devices. In order for you to prepare the submission of your certification project in the best conditions and align your transition strategy with the requirements of the Regulation EU 2017/745, it is essential and paramount to understand and master the different rules related to device sampling. There are two main types of sampling criteria: qualitative criteria and quantitative criteria. The qualitative criteria will be used to select the device or devices to be evaluated. Criteria that should be considered when selecting the device include the destination of the device, the degree of novelty of the technology, risks associated with the intended use of the device, the range, i.e. the set of devices covered by your certification project, similarities in design, technology, manufacturing and sterilization methods, the complexity of manufacturing technologies, any available information from post-market surveillance, and finally, the results of any previous assessments conducted in accordance with the regulations. The quantitative sampling criteria will be used to determine the number of technical documentation evaluations to be performed. There are two categories of quantitative criteria: quantitative criteria to be applied before the certificate is issued, and quantitative criteria to be applied after the certificate is issued. In this module, we'll only discuss the sampling criteria applied before the certificate is issued. The criteria to be applied after the certificate is issued will be detailed in future modules. The quantitative criteria for sampling medical devices prior to certificate issuance will vary depending on the class of device. For Class 3 and 2B implantable devices, with the exception of sutures, staples, dental fillings, orthodontic appliances, dental crowns, screws, wedges, plates, guides, pins, clips, and connecting devices, the sampling principle does not apply. Therefore, each device must undergo an evaluation of the technical documentation before the certificate is issued. The reference code used to identify the number of devices to be evaluated is the base UDI ID. That is, a technical documentation evaluation will be performed for each basic UDI ID. For other Class 2B devices, sampling is performed within generic groups according to the following rule. At least one device per generic group must undergo a technical documentation evaluation before the certificate is issued. Generic groups are established from the fourth level of the EMDM. For Class 2A devices, sampling is carried out within different categories according to the following rule. At least one device per category must be evaluated for technical documentation before the certificate is issued. For this class of devices, the categories are established from the design codes reflecting the design and destination of the device, namely the MDA and MDN codes. Regarding Class 1S, 1M, 1R devices, these devices are not subject to the technical documentation evaluation process. The provisions for these devices are only reviewed during the manufacturer's on-site audit. Please also note that Class 2B active devices intended to administer into and/or remove from the body medicinal product are subject to sampling. However, due to the consultation procedure of the expert group under Article 54 of the regulation, the clinical evaluation of each device must be carried out systematically before the certificate is issued. Let's take an example to illustrate these sampling rules with the case of a manufacturer who would submit a formal application for certification for the following device line: 5 Class 2A devices grouped in Category A, category defined with the MDA code 0201. 15 Class 2A devices grouped within Category B, category defined within MDA code 0302. 15 non-implantable Class 2B devices grouped in Generic Group A, Generic Group A defined with code R030102. For this manufacturer, the total number of assessments of the technical documentation to be carried out before issuing the certificate shall be at least 3 assessments, with at least 1 assessment of the technical documentation of a representative device of Category A. That is to say that at least 1 device among the 5 devices present in this category must be subject to evaluation. The selection of the device concerned will be made according to the qualitative criteria presented above. There will also be at least 1 assessment of the technical documentation of a representative device in Category B. That is, at least 1 of the 15 devices in this category must have a technical documentation assessment. Finally, at least 1 evaluation of the technical documentation of the device representative of Generic Group A. This means that at least 1 device out of the 50 devices in this category must be subject to a technical documentation assessment. On the basis of these 3 assessments of the technical documentation, the notified body can decide whether or not to issue the corresponding certificates for all of the devices covered by the formal application for certification, i.e. the 70 devices in the 2 categories and the generic group. After this presentation of the new regulatory provisions, some information regarding the quotes issued under Regulation EU 2017/745. As previously stated, GMED provides the manufacturer with 1 or more quotes related to the specific conformity assessment at the conclusion of the CIF analysis. The manufacturer may receive 3 distinct types of quotes. Firstly, a quote for the certification cycle audits, including the review of the QMS portion of the application. A quote for the preliminary review of the technical documentation. Please note that 1 quote is issued per preliminary review. A quote for the evaluation of the technical documentation. 1 quote is issued for each technical documentation evaluation service to be performed. For the evaluation of 1S, 1M and 1R class devices, only the estimate for the certification cycle audits, including the review of the QMS part application, is sent to the manufacturer, since there is no evaluation of the technical documentation for this type of device. For clarification purposes only, GMED includes a definition section in its quotations. This section defines the various terms used in the quotations. The GMED rates are available on the internal GMED website. These rates are updated annually. Concerning the estimates for the audits of the certification cycle, including the examination of the application QMS part, these quotes include fees related to the review of the formal application for QMS certification, the price of the initial audit, a price estimate for the next 2 surveillance audits. These estimates are reviewed annually based on the output of the assessments performed during the first year, updated GMED pricing, and information and changes submitted by the manufacturer. The quotations therefore cover the services related to the quality management system audits over a period of 3 years, irrespective of the validity period of the EU Quality Management System certificates or EU Quality Assurance certificates, which may be up to 5 years. Please note that fees related to the review of the formal application for QMS part certification must be paid in advance. Regarding the estimate for the preliminary review of the technical documentation, an estimate is issued for each preliminary review to be performed. These estimates include the costs associated with the preliminary review of the technical documentation by the certification project manager as part of a review of the formal application for certification, the intervention of the internal clinician to determine the resources needed for the clinical assessment to be conducted, the systematic involvement of the internal clinician in the determination of resources results from the requirement of Regulation EU 2017/445 2017/745. Concerning the quotations for the evaluation of technical documentation, for Class 3 and 2B implantable devices, excluding Class 2B implantable devices such as sutures, staples, dental fillings, orthodontic appliances, dental crowns, screws, wedges, plates, guides, pins, clips and connecting devices, a quote for the evaluation of the technical documentation is sent to the manufacturer for each device. These estimates include a formal identification of the device. For Class 2A and 2B devices subject to sampling, an estimate for the evaluation of the technical documentation is sent to the manufacturer for each device selected within the corresponding category or generic group. These specifications do not include the identification of the selected device as part of the sampling plan established prior to the issuance of the certificate. Only the name of the generic category or group and the generic name of devices are indicated. Please note that for each Class 2B active device intended to deliver into the body and/or remove from the body a drug not selected in the sampling plan, a clinical evaluation quotation is prepared and sent to the manufacturer. This estimate does not include the identification of the device. Each year, according to the sampling plan established after the issuance of the certificate for the Class 2A and 2B devices concerned, one or more quotations for the evaluation of the technical documentation are sent to the manufacturer for one or more devices. These quotes do not include the identification of the selected device or the corresponding generic category or group, only the generic name of the devices is indicated. Please note these estimates are only included in the evaluation of the technical documentation and do not include an evaluation of any additional elements. However, a daily rate is indicated for possible subsequent evaluations of additional elements. To conclude this first module, some information regarding an estimate of the cost of certification under Regulation EU 2017/745. For the quality management system audits, there is no significant difference with the cost of audits performed under the directives. Still, please note that any first formal application for certification under Regulation EU 2017/745 is considered and treated as an initial application for certification. Therefore, the duration of the first audit under the regulation is equivalent to the duration of an initial audit. Regarding the evaluation of the technical documentation, it is important to specify that the duration of the evaluation of the technical documentation does not depend on the class and type of device, but on the specificities of the device. We are coming to the end of this first presentation module dedicated to the pre-application phase. Important information related to this first decisive step in the certification process under Regulation EU 2017/745 is as follows. The manufacturer completes its single information form to describe in detail its project for certification to GMID. All requested information, including information on devices covered by the draft formal application for certification under Regulation EU 2017/745, and devices already certified under the directives must be provided, both as accurately as possible and with the most accurate data possible. At this stage, GMED does not assess the compliance of the submitted data with the requirements of Regulation EU 2017/745. This data is essentially analysed to perform regulatory checks, estimate the skills required to perform the conformity assessment activities, as well as the duration of the technical documentation assessment and auditing services, if any, in order to issue one or more quotes to the manufacturer. The single information form serves as the basis for defining the certification project. An error or inaccuracy in the information provided can have a significant impact on the entire certification process. The request for quotation must take place at least 12 months before the desired date of obtaining the result of the assessment and the certification decision under Regulation EU 2017/745. All the technical documentation of the devices present in a generic group and/or category must be ready and available in order to certify all the devices of the corresponding generic group and/or category. The quotations must be signed by the manufacturer in order to proceed to the next step in the certification process. This concludes this first module introducing the certification process under Regulation EU 2017/745. I hope that it will help you to better understand the issues and requirements of the pre-application phase, an essential step in introducing your certification project to GMED. Please contact our sales team or your certification project manager for more information or to initiate your request. As indicated at the beginning of the presentation, this module is part of a series of several videos. Their availability will be communicated to you as they are published. You will be able to find the following themes: the application phase, the conformity assessment phase, the decision phase, and lastly the post-certification monitoring and control phase. Thank you for your attention and see you soon.